This is Christian Gomez for the New American Magazine, and we are joined back again this week with Alex Newman and Andrew Muller, contributors for the New American Magazine, both of whom are down right now in Belém, Brazil, for the COP Conference of Parties number 30. Gentlemen, welcome back to the New American.
Thank you, Christian.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Well, today was an eventful, today, Thursday, that is, it was an eventful day down there. Some international headlines, not because of what was said at the UN, but rather because of what happened. So can you tell us about the sparks that have been flying, literally? What happened down there? There was a fire. Can you tell us about that fire, what happened, and maybe what caused it, if you know?
We had a lot of fun ideas for how to describe it. There was a dark cloud over the UN climate summit. And there was, Andrew was actually interviewing an artist who had made a rather vile, naked, obese Trump statue standing on the shoulders of a skeletal person, the King of Injustice statue. And suddenly out of the blue, Andrew was interviewing facing the other direction. So I'm filming this, and suddenly there's this big billowing black cloud, and Debbie, who's here with us on our team, says, guys, I think there's a fire. And then suddenly we see people running out, fire, fire, fire. And there was a fire. So all we know so far is what the UN has announced publicly. It started near the Chinese booth, which I assume means started at the Chinese booth. We'll see. And they told us they were going to try to open it back up tonight at 8 p.m. if it was safe. But that's essentially all we know right now. Andrew, what was your take?
Yeah, I mean, so we're doing this interview and I'm talking with this sculptor who made this statue of a very obese Donald Trump depicted on the back of this young child. And it was very disrespectful, very derogatory. And I just start to smell smoke. Everyone starts panicking. I turn around and this big cloud of black smoke is coming out of the UN facility. People start storming out of the building, thousands of people evacuating. We had to move our stuff so we didn't get trampled. And the smell of just fire and brimstone, if you will, came down upon all the participants. And very soon after that, then it started thundering very loudly and it started to rain a little bit. So it was almost a biblical scene, if you would.
We actually prayed this morning that God would interfere and confuse the camp of evildoers. So I wouldn't say we're responsible, but, if you believe in the sovereignty of God, I don't know, maybe there was some little divine hand in all of this.
So let me get this straight. Are you telling me that the United Nations facility emitted a large carbon footprint today?
Yes.
Massive carbon footprint. And I don't think they even tried to compensate for this one because, yesterday we got some great footage of the carbon credit machine. So when you walk in, they'll ask you about your flight and all that, and you can give them money. And apparently somehow that offsets your terrible carbon footprint. But as far as we know, they have not yet tried to offset the large amounts of black billowing smoke that were belching into the sky. And the lightning was interesting. But yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that they're not going to be offsetting that.
So has there been any rumors or speculation as to what caused the fire, even though maybe nothing has been confirmed yet?
The UN suggested it might have been electrical, but again, we weren't even in the building. We were very close to where it happened, but we were technically just outside the perimeter. So beyond what we've heard from talking to people and what the UN has said in official announcements that they send us, we don't know anything. So.
Well, it seems like the Brazilian government certainly rolled out the red carpet and gave only the best for the for this facility. Their best electrical equipment on full display here. Well, we're
honestly,
glad,
Christian, after living in, thank you, and after living in Brazil for many years, as much as the Brazilian people are wonderful, it's not terribly surprising to see situations like this. So.
Well, the UN wanted to condemn carbon footprint and the world getting warmer, and it certainly was getting really hot there at the UN today. So I guess they can't escape that. So hopefully nobody was injured at this, but it does seem like that does cut short a lot of the UN planning and prepared speeches. So is there a possibility that it may not be safe to return tomorrow or even tonight. And if that is the case, what does that mean for the conference? Are they still going to be able to unveil the pre-written document that they act like was written during the conference?
Yes, they've already released the draft of the agreement. There are still some points of contention, of course. We did hear that something like 12 or 13 people, it was 13 people, were treated for smoke inhalation on site. There was no word on whether they were all okay, but they said they were being monitored. But this has thrown a little bit of a monkey wrench into the conference. They were talking about coming up with a backup plan. They had some very important meetings this evening, starting at 6 p.m. And we heard from some of the people coming out, and we spoke with official government delegates and stuff. We heard from some people that they were planning on moving at least the essential big elements of the negotiations to another venue while they sorted this out. We were told that they were going to try to open up by 8 p.m. tonight. Maybe they'll open up by tomorrow. We'll see.
Okay. So in Scripture, in Ephesians chapter 6, it says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but essentially we wrestle against principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places. And you grabbed some footage, I believe, today of a statue that looked like a beast, like Lucifer, like a dragon. There it is on the screen. And this statue is holding what looks like a globe or a sphere that says COP30. So this certainly wasn't some kind of artwork that was already there, made by the natives that just happened to be there. This seems to be directed or created for this event. Can you tell us a bit about that artwork and your reaction to when you first saw that wicked Luciferian statue?
Yeah, well, a couple of nights ago, Christian, I was on social media looking up various posts from COP just to see what people were doing. And that's a good way to kind of find out what's on the ground. And I saw videos of this. And my first reaction was that I thought it was fake. I thought it would be AI or something like that. Upon further investigation, I discovered that no, in fact, this is real. And I have to be honest, I kind of had this spooky feeling of, wow, this really is a spiritual battle that we're facing. I already knew that, but this was just a very poignant reminder of it. So we did hunt down the statue. We found it. We took some really good pictures of it, some videos that will all be released at thenewamerican.com coming out soon. But the big takeaway from the statue was that it was a gift from the Chinese Communist Party to the Brazilian people. So, even though the Brazilian people don't like it, there's comments on posts where the Brazilian people say, the country of Brazil belongs to Jesus, not to Satan. A lot of comments like that are being quoted in articles. But this is no doubt kind of a demonic antichrist-looking character. It's a jaguar with human hands, spikes coming out of his back.
It's a jaguar dragon.
Yeah, they're calling it a jaguar dragon spirit guardian of the COP30. So very intimidating, but it does also, I think, reveal the truth, which is that these people aren't our enemies. It's ultimately the spiritual battle we're engaging with between Christ and Satan.
And Christian, while we were there, as soon as we showed up, we started doing some filming. So I got the microphone and we're standing there. And the nice Chinese attendant at the statue said, how would you like it? Do you want it spinning? Do you want it not spinning? I told him we wanted it not spinning if possible. So he stopped the spinning. And he started taking pictures of me as soon as I started talking about this, and then he disappeared. So we don't know what happened, but I don't think he was pleased with our commentary. That's going to be available on X and at thenewamerican.com soon enough. But really, this is, I think, an incredible scene. If I were trying to design some sort of demonic character that I thought would be a perfect representation of the process that's taking place here, I could not have done a better job of that than the artist did with that. But there has been a lot of commentary from Brazilians. Brazil is a proud Catholic country. They've got a long history of Catholicism. And, it's so much so that they've got a big giant statue of Jesus Christ overlooking
Christ
Rio de Janeiro,
the Redeemer. It's the most famous statue in all of Brazil, maybe even all of South America, all of the Western Hemisphere. And to create a statue that looks obviously like the devil, like a demon. I mean, that does not look like a traditional Chinese dragon. Not that I'm an expert on traditional Chinese dragons, but that certainly does not bear the resemblance of a cultural Chinese dragon, which even that can be debatable whether how pagan that is. But this is clearly, that image there is clearly one of what looks like Satan. So the artists knew what they were doing. I don't think they just, it just accidentally turned up this way.
Right.
No, yeah, and again, Brazil, very Christian country. Rio de Janeiro was their capital for a long time, so they've always had Jesus kind of looking down on their politics, on their culture, on all of it. And even here, Belém. I mean, Belém is literally what we would call Bethlehem. The whole city is built around this beautiful cathedral dedicated to the Virgin Mary. So, there's a very strong Catholic element in all of Brazilian politics and culture and society. And a lot of people, evangelical and Catholic, were frustrated that this is now the official spirit guardian symbol of this so-called climate conference.
France is historically a U.S. ally, and they gifted the United States the Statue of Liberty, which is a gorgeous statue of a beautiful woman depicting liberty for the American people and how the U.S. is that beacon of liberty. And that's a gift from our ally to us. And obviously Brazil and China, they belong to the BRICS, so they're allies with each other. That's quite a gift to get from your friends in China if you're Brazil. I imagine that the Brazilian people are quite upset with that and not pleased. Is there any talk about it in the Brazilian media, or are they covering up at the orders of the communist government?
There's been some coverage. There's definitely been some coverage. In fact, even Reuters picked up the story we saw today. So it's becoming an international issue. We'll see whether the American media picks this up. The American media, I think, is very strategically avoiding all mention of this. But I think the more they cover this in Brazil, the more outrage there will be as people see this. It really is demonic looking. You notice it's holding the world in its hands. But yeah, to your point, Christian, the geopolitical ties between communist China and Brazil are only getting deeper and deeper. One of the big festivities a few days ago here at the conference was Lula announced that the Brazilian government had ordered some insane amount of these junky Chinese electric cars, and they showed up in a big caravan of 30 of them. So a lot of the official COP30 Brazilian government vehicles are actually these junky communist Chinese made electric cars. So
the last time we spoke, I asked you, gentlemen, if you were going to be able to perhaps get some photos or video of the bulldozed area of the Amazon that was paid in order to create this highway that was supposed to service visitors and guests going to the UN conference, because nothing says sustainable development like bulldozing the Amazon rainforest. We don't want the greedy capitalists and who are destroying the environment to do that. Let the UN and the communist Brazilians do it, because what they do it's good, right? So were you able to obtain any footage or confirm the existence of that road?
Yes, we were. Yeah, we were able to find it, Christian. A lot of people, we think, have tried to find it. Some people, I don't think, actually found the exact location. But we did some research, looked at satellite imagery, and we drove out into the middle of the rainforest. We lost cell phone signal. There was a lot of mosquitoes, a lot of lightning bugs, a lot of critters. But we did end up finding it. And we took some videos, we took some pictures, and it is real and it does exist.
Yeah. We also spoke with a resident there, Christian, who was very upset. And I'll start off by saying, full disclosure, I don't hold anything against anyone for building a road. Frankly, Belém has insane amounts of traffic. We've spent hours and hours and hours sitting in cars, getting to and from places. It really is horrendous how bad the traffic is here. I think they absolutely need a new road to try to bypass some of that. But we did speak with a resident. As soon as we rolled up, a man came through on a bicycle, and I asked him what he thought about this big giant 4-lane highway they were building through his jungle, and he was furious. He said, "We don't want this thing. It's a piece of junk. It's intruding here. We never asked for it. What we really would like is water. So we're fighting with the government now to try to get us some water." He was also very upset that the road that they were building was causing water to go into their homes. I guess they didn't really do the drainage properly. But again, I think the BBC tried to make a mountain out of a molehill with this. The project was first proposed back in 2012. Desperately needed here. The roads are not very good. The traffic is out of control. So, nothing against the government for trying to build some more infrastructure. Infrastructure is needed. And if you have to cut down some trees to build a highway so that people can get places, I understand. But, yes, it is pretty ironic that a conference about saving the rainforest and saving the climate featured tens of thousands of acres of protected rainforest being chopped down. And by the way, I should point out as well, they never finished the highway. In typical socialist Brazilian government fashion, they didn't even come close.
Just like the hotel in Pyongyang, North Korea, right? It's just
Right.
an empty eyesore. So yeah, that's Marxist engineering for you. Wow. But speaking of China and Brazil's ties during the conference, have you seen any indications that that relationship is only deepening further, that it will deepen further? Would you say, in your estimation, that Brazil is or en route to becoming a captive nation of the Chinese communists?
100% for sure, Christian. The evidence is all around us. Brazil is essentially now, I would argue now, a colony of communist China. Like the United States, they had institutional momentum. You know, I would argue that Brazil historically has been a part of Western civilization. It was, of course, founded by the Portuguese. And so, you know, they still have that traditional roots in kind of Western European Catholic culture, if you will. But that is rapidly giving way to the communist takeover. Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva actually says publicly, he says, they call us communists. I'm proud to be a communist. We've got him on video. He was the founder with his buddy Fidel Castro, with the Sandinistas from Nicaragua, with the Armed Revolutionary Forces of Colombia, the FARC. They created the Sao Paulo Forum to take over Latin America for the communists. So yes, Lula is a critical part of the international communist movement. You know, a lot of people talk about Maduro in Venezuela. He's a minor player compared to Lula. And of course, the key allies of the Sao Paulo Forum, which is eventually aiming to overthrow the United States and bring the world under communist control, are Communist China and Russia. But Christian, you know, our good friends at the John Birch Society have been sounding the alarm about this for a very long time. The Council on Foreign Relations is helping this process out at every step of the way. You cannot understand the Sao Paulo Forum takeover of Latin America without understanding that the U.S. State Department and the Council on Foreign Relations have been critical in helping this process along. Barack Obama helped hand Colombia over to the Marxists on a silver platter. George Soros has been helping to finance these schemes forever. And it's still going on today in the Central America right now. Congresswoman Maria Salazar was talking about how an ambassador right this moment, a U.S. ambassador, is intervening in, I believe it was Guatemala's judicial elections on the side of the socialists. Of course, he's a holdover from the Biden administration. So this elite globalist takeover of Latin America in partnership with the Chinese Communist Party, with Lula right at the center of it, is still proceeding apace. And Communist China is now probably the most significant partner of Brazil when it comes to international trade. And that's only going to intensify in the years ahead unless something very dramatic changes, like Jair Bolsonaro is able to come back to power.
And what is your feel about the chances of that happening in Brazil in the next elections?
Well, he's been criminally prosecuted. He's actually locked up right now. He's on house arrest at the moment with an ankle monitor. They're trying to do the same thing they tried to do to Donald Trump: destroy his family, destroy his name, destroy his reputation, lock him up forever, and throw away the key. And you know, we know that the Brazilian people, I believe, overwhelmingly supported him. And we have talked to so many regular, everyday people here, Christian, and the overwhelming sentiment is that the election was stolen, the country's out of control. We actually had a taxi driver pretty much start crying on us, said he was getting goosebumps as he was telling us about the horror. He said, you can't even criticize the government anymore without being thrown in prison, that they're shutting down the ability to criticize on the internet. So there's a lot of concerns that if he actually begged, you know, Trump, you please tell your president he has to help us. This is so bad. So people here are very concerned about the direction things are going. They're worried that they're going to become another Cuba.
So are you saying that you know, this almost sounds like what you're describing, the situation in the United Kingdom, where people post a criticism of mass migration or Prime Minister Starmer and the Labour government, and if you say something you shouldn't say, you might get a visit from the Bobbies over there in the UK. Would you say it's like that, or even worse than that, closer to communist Cuba? What is it right now? What is it like in Brazil? And are the UN officials, are they promoting Brazil as a model for how the rest of Latin America and the world should be?
Well, yes, Brazil is largely seen as a model by the totalitarians and the globalists at the United Nations. As to where Brazil is on that spectrum, not as bad as communist Cuba yet. You know, I would argue that probably the overwhelming majority of the police, the military, even a lot of the bureaucrats are still very much opposed to this takeover. They're still loyal to Jair Bolsonaro. And I think Lula knows that. That's why when he does his little drives through town, they don't actually have people on the street, right? Whereas Jair Bolsonaro would go out to just the screams of hundreds of thousands of adoring fans. It's like night and day. So they're not quite at communist Cuba levels yet, but that's where they're heading if this doesn't shift gears. Whether Jair Bolsonaro can make a comeback or not, considering the current conditions on the ground here, that's, something God only knows. I don't know. But I can tell you the public is very frustrated with this. They're also very scared about what's happening here. And I think this is really what the United Nations likes. We talked last time we were together, Christian, about the very obvious attack on free speech coming from the United Nations. They even signed that little agreement to suppress misinformation. So it's one of the stories we've been monitoring here. The UN is basically coming out and saying we cannot have all these people just saying whatever they want. And it's not even just critics of the man-made climate hysteria. Now they're saying that even if you just criticize the supposed solutions to the climate crisis, that you need to be silent. So the totalitarianism, the mask is dropping. It's really coming out of the closet here. And you feel sorry for the Brazilians and really the people of the world. We may have a temporary reprieve in the United States, but we're in the same boat as all these people.
So tomorrow, Friday, from the moment that we're recording this, is supposed to be the last day of the conference, assuming the conference is able to resume, which it sounds like they might, even if they have to switch venue locations if the fire damage was worse than what they thought. But it's going to end tomorrow, more than likely. So what can people expect out of this COP30? What is how does this COP stand apart from previous COPs, and where do you think they're headed when it comes to COP31? How far along totalitarianism and collectivism is the UN moving with this particular COP?
Well, I think that the difference between this COP and the other ones and what the outcome will be is just more radical than ever before. I think that's been clear with the lack of U.S. delegation. At various individuals at COP saying we need to double down with the lack of U.S. representation and go forward with our ambitious goals and have the next administration be forced to be, abiding by this declaration. So I think that they're going to be radical. I think they're going to be heavy on their censorship element. Of course, that whole censorship declaration came out, which was a first that had ever been on the COP action docket. So I think we're going to be looking at one of the most aggressive declarations because of the lack of U.S. involvement. We're going to be looking at censorship. And you're going to be looking at funding like you've never seen before. So from my point of view, that's what we're looking at. And then also all the while, the COP people are continuing to encourage very local involvement to subvert the federal government in the United States, currently under the control of the Trump administration. And make no mistake, they are not giving up. That is why it's so important for us Americans, as I said in our last interview, to get the U.S. out of the UN.
And you asked Christian about the previous COPs. I've been going to these for about 15 years now. Took up the baton from William Jasper, who was covering these for the New American before that. You can really describe the process as 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So every year they take a little bit of additional ground. And so each year they propose crazy new ideas, or at least ideas that sound crazy to a normal person. They normalize those ideas. They launder them through NGOs, through governments, through media, increasingly prominent people buying in. And then a few years down the line, they get those into these agreements. So under the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, what they do, they meet every year. This is the 30th annual meeting. They come up with a new agreement where they build on the structure that already existed under the UNFCCC and all the previous agreements. So this year, what they're looking at, they're talking about a concrete roadmap to phasing out fossil fuels, which is what was agreed to in Dubai back a couple of years ago. They agreed they're going to phase out fossil fuels, but they never came up with a plan for it. So that's one of the big items on the agenda here. Last year in Azerbaijan, Andrew and I were there as well. I was in Dubai too, like I said, but Andrew's first one was in Azerbaijan last year. They agreed to 1.3 trillion wealth redistribution per year from wealthier nations, like, of course, the United States, the taxpayers in the United States, to the governments and the United Nations. as partial compensation and as aid to try to deal with this climate. So those are two of the big issues. There's a lot of side issues in here. They're using indigenous people, as we discussed a few days ago, Christian, as kind of a battering ram. And right in the very beginning, right in the pretext to this agreement, they actually talk about the need for taking into account indigenous peoples and their rights and their perspectives. So that's going to be a big part of this, is using indigenous peoples, so-called, as a battering ram to delegitimize nations like the United States, to suggest that the whole edifice is built on evil and needs to be dismantled. So that's what we're watching right now. And I guarantee you they will gain ground. They will probably gain more ground than usual this year, because these things are usually approved by consensus, which just means that no government officially objected. And without the Trump administration here to formally object to these ideas, they're very confident that they can get a massive power grab through, and then they'll just work on enforcing it as soon as we have a new president in office. And that's what they've been saying publicly. That's what they're intending to do. Of course, Trump still has a Trump card. He can pull us out of the UNFCCC, or even better, he could, as Andrew said, get us out of the UN entirely with help from Congress with the passing of the Defund Act. And that would really, really put them in a bad situation, because, if the United States is going to remain prosperous and not participate in this, the rest of the thing comes crashing down. But those are basically the options we're looking at. We'll probably know what the final agreement looks like by Saturday or Sunday. But for now, folks, hang on to your wallets, hang on to your liberty, because these tyrants are going for broke.
Well, thank you so much, Alex and Andrew, for the coverage and for being down there in the trenches in the front lines. So we look forward to those reports and videos that you'll be sending our way here to the New American, that will be posted on the newamerican.com. So everyone who's watching, check out other videos on the newamerican.com from the COP conference that feature Alex and Andrew interviewing, including so-called artists making statues of Donald Trump being obese on the back of a skeletal child. Oh, okay. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much. God bless you both. May the Lord grant you safety, keep you safe from any further fires, and a safe flight back to the United States of America, the land of freedom. So take care.
Thank you so much. God bless you.
And for more videos like this, be sure to visit thenewamerican.com. Also, check thenewamerican.com out for articles by Alex Newman and Andrew Muller on the COP30 conference. And if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube, on Rumble, and follow us on X and on Facebook. Thank you so much. Take care, and God bless.